Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. As usual, I'm going to give you guys just a couple of minutes to get joined. But in the meantime, I'm going to give a couple of announcements, talk about what we've done in the past, as well as what we're going to do today. So my name is Elise Lease, and I have been leading and moderating these trainings. And today's trainer is Caroline Landis, and she's going to be talking about our program review report. And so I'm really excited to see her perspective on that as well. We all do our own trainings on these, and so it's super awesome to see the little pieces that people add in. But just for those of you that this is your first training, we are doing monthly trainings for higher ed with our clients to go over more detailed information about job postings, our LMI, all of those things that you have questions about at Emsi Burning Glass. And so we want to make sure that you have the information to be successful. It's very, very hard for me to say Emsi Burning Glass because it's so new, but it is exciting coming with the merger and everything. So we're just excited to see where that goes. So the format of these trainings are pretty casual. You guys will all be muted, but if you have questions, please feel free to throw them into the chat feature and we'll make sure to answer those as we go. There's a dedicated chat session at the end, so where we can ask questions and we'll go over all of those if Caroline doesn't cover them in the training. We do record this, so if you have anyone you want to share it with or you weren't able to stay for the whole thing today, that's totally okay. We will send out that recording in a couple of days. Aside from that, I think we'll just wait just 1 or 2 more minutes. We still have quite a few people joining. We will have a poll at the end as well. So if there's questions that you want to ask but weren't able to ask today, or you want to be put in touch with your account manager, please fill out that poll. And we'll be able to help get back to you. So welcome everybody. And actually, Caroline, I'm going to turn it right over to you so you can get started. And let me make sure you can share your screen and then we'll go from there. All right, so you have screen sharing.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Elise. So tell me when to get started and I'll wait for your signal.
Yeah, totally. So you can get started now if you want to. And just as a quick reminder to everybody, we will be recording this and we will be sending out a, in the chat feature, I'll add in some URLs that will take you to previous trainings so that you can go and take a look at those as well. But all of our trainings will go into that web page so that if you want to be able to go check it out every month and you don't want to wait for us to send out the email about the recording, it's typically up there the day of or day after the training, so you can always go to this URL. But yes, we want to make sure that you all can have this resource for you. So Caroline, take it away.
All right, thanks, Elise. So we're going to hop straight into Analyst together. I'm just going to log in here, and this is going to take me straight to the Analyst homepage. So here I am on the home screen of Analyst. For those of you who use it, this will look pretty familiar to you. And we're going to be talking about the Program Development and Review Report. So to get there, I'm going to go over to the Programs category here on my left. Click on that. And then we're going to head over to the Program Development and Review Report. So this is a structured workflow using relevant data to review and develop academic programs. So we're going to get into what all that looks like. So for those of you who are Analyst subscribers, users, you know that a lot of our reports, you go in, you set your search parameters, and then you get your data and you're done. And those are really nice. This report is sort of like a lot of our other reports rolled into one. So on this first page, you'll see right off the bat, we're going to be walking through multiple different steps in this one single report. So it is a step-by-step guided workflow. And the real beauty of that is we're going to be able to pull together tons of different kinds of data from government sources, from online sources. We're going to be able to pull all of that into one spot and at the end have one finalized report that we can export that's got all of that pulled together. So what we're going to be doing in this report, as the name would suggest, is we're going to be selecting a program to evaluate, either a program that does not yet exist at an institution and we want to see, you know, would it be worthwhile for our service district, for the economy that we serve, would it be worthwhile to start this program? Or alternatively, we could look at a program that an institution already offers and see, you know, are we justified in continuing to offer this? If we were to tweak it, to adjust it, to match our economic needs, what would we want to change there? So we can do that with an existing or a non-existing program. So we're going to start off by selecting an institution to work with. So I have already decided that I want to look at Madison Area Technical College because they're an institution that I've used this report with before in the past. And they're one that I work with. I work with the state of Wisconsin. So we're going to take a look at their area. And I wanted to select that because Madison is, you know, the capital city of Wisconsin. It's also near to Milwaukee, so we've got some different cities that we can look at and gauge their economic needs there. So next we're going to define our program. And so as I'm drawing on my experience with Madison Area Technical College in the past, one of the programs that I remember using this report with them for was their accounting program. So we're going to take a look at that, but I want to quickly show you how we can search for a program. So I can search for a program by SIP, or by Classification of Instructional Programs code. And so if I know what that code is, I can start typing it in. So if I know the code that I want to type, I can just put that in, but I don't have to know the digits of the code. I could just search for accounting, and there is that SIP code. But I didn't have to know it. I could just search for accounting and all of these potential matches come up for me. I could also, instead of searching by SIP code, I could search by keyword or skill. So, you know, I've worked with some schools in the past where they want to know, should we start a program around this type of skill or competency? And neither I nor they know, is there a SIP code out there that would teach that skill? So we could just search for a particular skill. You know, we could search something like robotics or web developing or something like that to kind of start figuring out, is there a SIP code that might match this? But in the case of accounting, we already found the one that I wanted to look for. So let me just switch back. And we're going to take a look at 520301 here. All right. So we've chosen our SIP code, and then we will confirm and continue. So once we've defined our program, the next step is defining our competitive landscape. So what I mean by competitive landscape is that for a given area, there might be multiple schools supplying graduates for a particular program or for a particular occupational area. So, you know, in the area of Madison, Wisconsin, I know there's Madison Area Technical College, but there could be other colleges or universities supplying graduates from the Madison area that I don't know about. So what I can do is I can decide what institution sectors I want to consider when evaluating competing programs. So my thought is, if I want to see who all is offering an accounting program or something very close, if I want to find all the colleges and universities in the Madison area that are offering an accounting type program, I might want to leave all of these on. So I can see I've got public four-year institutions, private not-for-profit four-year institutions or above. I know Madison Area Technical College, they do offer some four-year. They also offer mostly two-year programs. So I could turn those off, but I might want to leave those on. I can leave on all of the two-year options. And then this first option here, administrative unit only. This was kind of confusing to me when I first came into this report, but what that means is sometimes there are groups of colleges in the same system, and while each individual college offers programs and produces graduates, their graduates are reported at just the system office level. So I work with a couple states that operate on that method, and so if that's the case, I might want to keep that on as well. And I'm going to keep it on just in case there's a system that operates that way in the Madison area that I might not happen to know about. So the next question is asking me, which education level do I want to consider when evaluating competing programs? Well, if I know that Madison Area Technical College offers a lot of two-year degrees, then I'd want to turn on that associate's degree. I might also want to turn on some of these award levels to capture any competing accounting certification programs that maybe aren't a full associate's degree, but maybe offer a little training just under or beyond that. So I want to turn those on as well. And then it's up to me, do I want to keep that 4-year degree turned on or no? So for now, I'll keep that turned on. Next question's asking me, which program types do I want to consider when evaluating competing programs? So my two options are distance and non-distance programs. The distance offered programs would include those hybrid programs as well. And so if I don't want to look at brick and mortar, or if I don't want to look at distance learning, I can deselect either of those, but for now I'm going to keep those on. This next question is asking me if I want to view any cost variables for any of these programs at any of these colleges or universities. And so I can decide what I might like to look at here. So if I want to look at tuitions and fees, or maybe instead cost per credit, I can select that. If I want to look at graduate or undergraduate programs, for now I do want to look at undergraduate. If I want to look at in-state or in-district or out-of-state tuition. And then what region do I want to consider when evaluating competing programs? So what I have pre-selected here is the 5 counties that Madison Area Technical College serves, so their service district. So I've already got those pre-populated. But if I wanted to expand my region and look beyond that service district, I could add other counties as well. We also have our interactive map feature that would allow me to just plug in Madison Area Technical College. And there they are. So I'm going to plug that in, and this is going to pull for me all of the counties that fall within whatever radius I have selected there. So I could make this larger or smaller and then choose exactly what counties I want to include. But for now, we're just going to stick with the 5 counties of the service district that I have pre-populated. Okay, so next portion here, I'm asked if I want to include any additional programs when evaluating the competitive landscape. So we saw on the last page when I searched accounting, there were multiple zip codes for accounting, slightly different programs, but maybe I'd want to, add some of those in and capture if any other colleges or universities in these 5 counties offer those accounting programs, not just the 520301 that we're primarily looking at. So if I wanted to broaden my search, I've got some similar options based on my program here, and so I could go through and add some of these that stand out to me. If I also know of, if I wanted to search maybe 520302, could search that and add that as well. So I've got a few very similar programs added to evaluate those completions as well. So let's confirm and continue. So we've set our search parameters for our competitive landscape, and now we're going to be able to see the data that matches our search parameters and start to evaluate it. So for those different accounting programs we just added, I can see for these 5 counties of Wisconsin, there are 372 completions. Now, let's talk a little bit about what those mean, where we get that data, how recent it is. So all of the completions counts from different colleges, that's all comes from IPEDS. So if any of you are familiar with the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System, all colleges and universities in the United States that receive any type of government funding have to report what programs they offer, what awards those are awarded at, how many completions for each of those programs for each year. So every summer, IPEDS releases the previous year of completions and programs, and every summer we wait for that release and then upload it into Analyst. So they have just released 2020, and we're working on processing that and getting it into the software. I believe if you check your data release notes in Analyst, you'll be able to see when our estimated release date is. It's coming up in the next week or two. But for right now, we're still looking at 2019 data, but stay tuned, 2020 data is imminent. For now, we're looking at these local completions, local for those 5 counties, from 2019 for those different accounting programs that I added. And I can see the breakdown here, all of the programs, how many were distance offered, how many were non-distance offered, keeping in mind that this is 2019 graduations, not 2020. All right, and if we scroll on down, I can see all of the different institutions in our 5-county region that offer these accounting programs. And for any of them, I can see that these are in blue and they've got a little plus sign, which tells me I can click on any of these and just expand that out and see, all right, well, this institution, University of Wisconsin in Madison, they're offering accounting training at the bachelor's and the master's level, and I can see how many completions they have reported through iPads over time. Here's Madison Area Technical College. And I can view all of these other institutions as well. So these are the list of 5 institutions that offer these accounting programs and that match our search parameters in our service district. Now I can manually add other institutions to this table if I wanted to. So I've had questions before about, well, you know, there's another college down the road that we're pretty sure offers this accounting program. Why aren't they showing up on the list? I say, well, let's search them and see. You know, might very well be that now they offer an accounting program for 2020, but in 2019 they did not have any completions. So we can search and see their 2019 completions. So I'm going to just pull out an institution out of thin air, some other institution from Wisconsin. Let's take a look at Milwaukee Area Technical College and add them to the list. So I can see that they have 133 completions. The reason they didn't show up on this list is they're not in our service district. If I picked out another college that was in our service district and I added them and I saw they have 0 completions, even though they're in our service district, they weren't showing up because they don't have any completions for 2019. So this list will only show me the institutions in our service district with completions for the year we're looking at. But I can manually add other institutions further away or institutions to demonstrate, well, they didn't report completions for that year. So use this field as you need. All right, I'm going to go ahead and remove them here. So for these different institutions here, we're looking at their completion counts, and we're looking at how many completions they've all as an aggregate reported over the last few years. So we can kind of gauge the regional trends for an accounting program for our service district. And I can see that broken out by distance and non-distance, and how many completions there were in 2012 against how many completions in 2019. So I'll hit confirm and continue, and we'll be taken on to the next step. So we're going to be shifting our focus from what are other local colleges and universities doing to what's the labor market doing? And if we're going to offer this program, are there viable jobs? Is there enough economic demand to justify continuing to offer this accounting program? So the first question I'm asked is, what region of the labor market do I want to analyze? Now, typically, it'll be the same region that I'd entered at the previous step. And you can see that that's just carried over for me, and I don't have to worry about it. Once in a while, there might be a reason why you'd want to switch this up. So let's say for this particular program, let's say accountants in your area tend to have long commutes, or maybe there's a city just outside your service district, but you know a lot of your graduates are going to be willing to either commute or relocate to that larger city for job opportunities. If that's the case, we might want to go ahead and expand our region here to capture that other city, or broaden the list of counties that we have. And so we can just type in another county, or we can go back to that map using radius from address or drive time and broaden, or sometimes maybe restrict what labor market region we're analyzing. But for now, I'm going to keep that the same. And now I get to decide what target occupations do I want to evaluate in association with this program. So if we're talking about a zip code, we're talking about 520301 for accounting. What kind of jobs would that lead to? What target occupations would make sense? What are you training your students to be prepared to do once they enter the workforce? And so this is where I get to determine what occupations I want to pull in and evaluate. So just like we could with selecting our program, we can search by government code, standard occupation classification code. And again, I don't need to know the digits of that code. I can just start typing in something like accounting and give it a search. But I can also search for keyword or skill. So if I wanted to look for tax preparing, I can search that. Now I've already got I've already got tax preparers added. So let me go ahead and remove a few of these options here so that we can search and find some of them again and show you how this search feature works. So I'll just leave the obvious one-to-one correlation. Go to school to be an accountant, you work as an accountant. But what about all of the other very similar overlapping types of jobs that could also be target occupations? So I can search for tax preparing either as a standard occupation classification code. Don't have to know the digits though, I can just type it in. And I could search for it as a skill and see what comes up, and then kind of work from my prompts here to add those to my list of selected occupations. So we'll go ahead and do that. So I typed in tax preparers, and there is an occupation code. So I'm going to go ahead and add that and go over to keyword or skill. Is there anything else that comes up? Well, bookkeeping, accounting, and auditing clerks, that seems like I'd want to include that as well. You know, maybe tax manager examiners, maybe not. Payroll and timekeeping clerks, maybe not. So I can kind of go through and evaluate. If I search accounting, we can see if anything else comes up. Maybe budget analyst, I'd want to include that. And so I can go through and just keep searching terms and SOC codes until I am happy with my resulting selected occupations. So we'll scroll on down, a couple more questions here. So I'm asked if I would like to focus forthcoming job posting analytics on a specific keyword or skill. So I'm going to take a pause just a second and talk about job posting analytics information versus what we've been looking at so far. So pretty much everything that we've looked at so far with our completions and what we're going to be getting into looking at these different standard occupation classification codes, that's all going to be standardized statistical data published by the US government. And so it's all very categorized, very regulated. Employers and colleges are required to report to the government periodically on who they employ, what programs they offer, how many graduates for each program, what they pay for different jobs. So all of that is government regulated, sourced, and published data. But then we're also going to be getting into job posting data, and that is sourced from the World Wide Web, the open internet. So that is when Emsi is looking at the internet and seeing, okay, well, this company over here put up a job posting. They say they want to hire an accountant. This one over here put up a posting because they say they want to hire a financial analyst. And it's just sort of like the Wild West. Employers, they need it to fill a position. They're going to type up whatever and put it out on the internet. So it's very different kind of data that we'll be getting into coming real-time internet source data. So it looks a bit different than the government source data, and it includes a lot more granular information like what particular skills are employers looking for. So the reason for this question is, you know, wanting to focus forthcoming job posting analytics on a specific keyword or skill. We're talking about that online source data. We're going to be using the fact that it mentions particular skills that are in demand right now. And are there any skills that we'd want to highlight and focus on exclusively? So for this accounting program, I'm not going to add any particular skills to search for, but where this could come in handy is, you know, let's say we're evaluating a school's web development program. But we've heard maybe anecdotally that in our area there's a bunch of need for web developers who are competent with a certain type of programming language. So we could go in and say, yes, I do want to focus on a particular skill, and we could plug in, you know, a particular language and then go from there. If I click this little question mark, This is just going to give me some pointers on how to use a Boolean keyword search to identify particular skills or competencies, or we could even search an MBA in there. But for now, I'm going to hit no. And then the last question, do you want to filter job postings and job counts based on a required level of education? If so, select the applicable education levels below. That little question mark gives me some further information on why we might want to do this. So filtering by education level filters job postings to those that require exactly that education level. So if an employer specifically states in a job posting that they are looking for somebody with a bachelor's degree, or they're looking for somebody with an associate's degree, if we had selected that, we would be pulling only in the job postings that mention that explicitly. Another thing that would result if you filtered by an education level is that the resulting job totals would be filtered in proportion to the workforce in those occupations with exactly that level of education. So our resulting job numbers would reflect the filter we'd added as well. I'm not going to add any particular filters right now because I know, just having looked at job postings data quite a bit, that many employers don't list a particular education level that they would like to see or that they require. And there's pros and cons to that, but I want to capture all of them and not allow the postings that don't list anything helpful about education. I don't want to allow those to fall through the cracks. So I'm not going to apply a filter here, but those would be the way that you could. And we have added this filter, no education listed. I still want to cast a broad net because I know that oftentimes accounting, there could be an accounting certificate that a school is offering, and maybe an employer would accept that, but they don't know what to call it. So I'm just going to cast a broad net, not add any education filters, but those are some reasons, some pros and cons why you might want to or might not want to. So I'm going to go ahead and confirm and continue. Like we did with the competitive landscape step, I've set our search parameters, and now we're going to evaluate the resulting data pull. Okay, so we added in 4 occupations, and first of all, we're going to look at those 4 occupations aggregated together. So for all 4 of those occupations, there were 11,629 jobs in 2020. Which is 23% above what we'd expect to see based on the national average. Now I've got a little question mark, so I can hover over that, and that defines for me what we mean by jobs. So jobs is the total number of full and part-time jobs. And we're getting this data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Bureau of Economic Analysis. And the most recent data that they have published telling us these job counts is from the year 2020. So that is the most recent data that is available. I can see as an aggregate, these occupations are showing a very stable rate of growth. They're not neither growing nor seeing decline. So it's very stable here. Whereas as an aggregate for these occupations, the national rate of growth is 2.1%. We can see aggregated earnings as well and aggregated annual openings. But now as I scroll on down, I can look at each of these occupations individually. So I can see the number of jobs in these 5 counties for each of these occupations individually from 2020, the number of annual openings for each of these occupations, the earnings, and then the rate of growth. And so I can see, well, some of these occupations are seeing a positive rate of growth. Some of these are shrinking a little bit. Bookkeeping, accounting, and auditing clerks, this is in decline by 2.37%. However, it still is the largest of these occupations, and it still has the largest number of annual openings. And annual openings, just to give a little context here, those would include job openings due both to growth. So if there are new jobs being created, it's going to count those, and it's going to count the jobs that are open due to churn. So if someone retires or transitions to a different occupation, they leave an opening behind them typically. So we're going to be counting churn and growth openings. All right, so we're going to be looking in this chart, the regional trends chart, just looking at that rate of growth for all 4 of those occupations. And as we saw, it's very stable. There's a little dip in 2020, and we can see that that has corrected somewhat, which is great to see. And so our dark navy blue dotted line, this is looking at our 5-county region in Wisconsin. That medium blue squared line, this is looking at the number of jobs across the state of Wisconsin in, again, we're talking about those 4 accounting, bookkeeping, tax preparer occupations. And then our light blue triangular line is going to be looking at those 4 occupations nationwide. Okay, so then we have demographics for those 4 occupations. So we can see an occupation gender breakdown, age breakdown, and race and ethnicity breakdown. And again, I've got these little question mark tooltips. So if I hover over that, this is going to give me some context for that data. And I believe all of these say pretty much the same thing. So it's a demographic breakdown. And the source for this demographic data is detailed industry demographics, staffing patterns, and the American Community Survey. All right, so now we're leaving behind the government-sourced statistical data, and we're getting into the job postings data. So we were looking at government-sourced, regulated, categorized info, and now we're heading into the Wild West of the internet. So the way that job postings data works is that the internet has free and openly available information out there. When an employer wants to hire somebody, they're going to type up a posting and put it out on the internet. Maybe they're going to post that posting multiple times on different platforms. And because it's free and publicly available information, we at Emsi are able to find those job postings and create a job posting data set that's constantly in flux because the internet's constantly in flux. So for those 4 accounting, bookkeeping, tax preparing occupations, we're able to find all of the job postings for those occupations that have shown up online, posted to our 5-county service district in the last year. So I can see that there were 18,517 total job postings for our selection from July 2020 to June 2021. So kind of looking at that calendar year, how many job postings showed up for these jobs in our area. But then we've got this smaller number, very small compared to the 18,000 plus. And this is the number of unique postings. And so what that means is that we have deduplicated that total count. I mentioned how oftentimes employers, they've got a position open in their company, they're going to post about it maybe multiple places on the internet, maybe their website, maybe a state job board, maybe a local job board, maybe glassdoor.com. And so we end up having these 4 identical job postings that go up the same day. And so when that kind of thing happens, we do a deduplication process and we tell you the resulting unique posting count. That's what this ratio is capturing for us. It's telling us for every unique job posting we identified from this area, for accountants and bookkeepers and so on, there were about 5 multiples. And these postings are staying up for about 30 days, which is a little longer than the regional average. And the regional average is just, what are all the other kinds of jobs, you know, maybe like healthcare jobs and computer software development jobs and automobile maintenance mechanic jobs, looking at all of the other jobs for our 5-county region. How long are those postings typically staying up? So we can see the unique posting trends for our selection of occupations over the last few years. And again, there's that 2020 dip and then a nice rise out of that in the last few months. This yellow is just our calendar year time frame. So from July 2020 up through June 2021. I can see a regional breakdown. So taking a look at our 5-county region, where is the highest volume of job postings distributed? And these are going to be the unique job postings over the last year. And again, all of these job postings, we're only looking at our selection of occupations for accountants and bookkeepers and so on. Below that, we can see the top companies posting to these 5 counties for our selected occupations. So we've got Creative Financial Staffing, Robert Half International, Ernst & Young, and so on. And for each of these occupations, I can see their total versus unique posting count, their posting intensity, and how long their postings are typically staying up. So for instance, for Creative Financial Staffing, their postings are staying up about 44 days, which tells me at the end of 44 days of that posting being live on the internet, they're either taking it down or it's expiring automatically. And some of these we'll see, like Higher Rocket, their postings stay up only 6 days. So I can kind of gauge which companies maybe are having a little bit more difficulty, sourcing talent. That could be one indicator of what that median posting duration is telling me. I can also see within our 5 counties which cities are getting posted to the most. Unsurprisingly, Madison getting posted to far and away the most, but we've got postings showing up for other cities as well. These are the 4 occupations we already selected on the last page, but I can see the number of total and unique postings for each of these occupations. Posting intensity, median posting duration, and then top posted job titles. So this is basically the same thing as this, but from a different lens. Whenever we're talking about occupations by SOC code, Standard Occupation Classification Code, we're looking at the government reported data. So that very categorized statistical data. But when we're looking at job titles, we're looking at the names of these job positions that employers are creating out of their own heads and putting out on the internet. So employers do not confine themselves to standard occupation codes. They're just going to know, hey, I need a staff accountant, I need it tomorrow, and I'm going to type up a posting and put it out on the internet. And so some of these job titles don't necessarily exactly match the government SOC codes, but this is the terminology that employers are using, and it's very helpful to see what are they calling these things. All right, so the last portion of this page is gauging our institution, and in this case, we're still looking at Madison Area Technical College. So gauging our institution as how it ranks as a local talent provider. So we're going to be looking at yet another kind of data here. We started with that government statistical data. We then moved to online source job postings. We're still going to be looking at online source data, but instead of looking at job postings, we're going to be looking at professional workforce profiles. So these would be anytime we find a resume or a profile or an account online that lists information about an employee or a worker in the workforce. So Emsi's workforce profile data shows that Madison Area Technical College has 627 alumni working regionally in the occupations that we'd selected. So those 4 occupations. And if I hover over that little question mark, this is just going to explain a little bit about that profile data. So this information all comes from Emsi's workforce profile data. We've got a database of well over 100 million online profiles and resumes that tell us, we found a bunch of people who work as accountants and tax preparers and auditors in these 5 counties, and they're listing what schools they attended at one point. So we've got 627 profiles that list Madison Area Technical College as a college of attendance. And that makes up 12.57% of all of the workforce profiles from these 5 counties for these target occupations. And what that comes out to is that Madison Area Technical College has the most number of workforce profiles in working in these target occupations in this area. So they're the top talent provider. And then we can see who are the other institutions that also provide talent for these occupations in this region. Okay, so confirm and continue. We're on to our last page. I don't have to change any of my search parameters, which is really nice. I can just get straight to analyzing the relevant skills. And so like I mentioned briefly earlier, the relevant skills data comes from those online job postings and also a little bit from profiles. So when an employer types up a job posting, puts it out there on the internet, oftentimes they're going to be listing, hey, we want an accountant who's really good at QuickBooks and maybe really good at Excel and really good at making financial statements. And those are all different types of skills. And then we're going to be looking at the profiles and resumes of people who work as accountants in this area and looking at their resumes and saying, figuring out which ones are saying, hey, I'm really good at QuickBooks, or I know how to prepare financial statements. So we can kind of compare and contrast what the skills demand is from local companies and employers and what the skills and competencies of the local workforce is. And we can kind of compare those and see where are the gaps, where is the workforce really well prepared and really meeting demand. So first off, we're going to analyze the top hard skills. So this is a list of the top 10 hard skills that have shown up the most number of times in online job postings requesting to hire accountants and tax preparers and bookkeepers. So we can see the top requested skill is accounting, followed by auditing, and so on down the list. So in the left, in the navy blue, this is letting us know the frequency with which these skills are showing up in job postings. And then on the other side with the lighter blue, looking at those same skills, but how often are those same skills showing up in workforce profiles? And it looks like, at least with these top 10 hard skills, the current workforce in Wisconsin is pretty well prepared to meet demand, which is pretty great. There's no huge gaps standing out to me. And so I can analyze those same top hard skills in a table format, which might be a little less visual, but I get the hard numbers easier to see here. And then I can analyze common skills the same way. So common skills are often going to be those less technical, slightly less occupation-specific skills, but are still really important for being a good worker or being a good accountant working for these companies. We can see there's a lot more variation in what the postings are asking for versus what the local workforce is saying if they have those skills on their resumes and profiles. So, local employers are asking for accountants who are good at all of these things, but are also really good at communications, that are detail oriented, that have verbal and written communication skills. And we can see that either the local workforce either does not have those skills or they didn't think to list them on their resume. And so just because we have discrepancies here doesn't always mean, well, there's a skills gap and the current workforce has no verbal or written communication skills. Well, maybe they do, but maybe they didn't think to list that. And so there's a couple ways that you can use this data. Maybe you look at this and say, okay, well, we really need to make sure we're training in those verbal and communication skills in our accounting program. Maybe that's true. Maybe you're already training for those things and you're training really well. Maybe what you need to do instead is encourage students as they're preparing to graduate, as they're preparing to enter the workforce, and they're writing their resumes and they're getting ready to market themselves to employers. Maybe encourage them, hey, these are some of the top soft skills that are being requested. So if you have those skills, make that clear, put that on your resume. Don't be afraid to advertise that about yourself because employers are looking for that. And we can analyze those same common skills in a table format, just like we could with the hard skills above. And then the final thing on this page, and actually the final piece of this walkthrough, is looking at the top qualifications that are being requested in these job postings. So qualifications is sort of like a miscellaneous grab bag of the certifications recognized by schools or governments or industries that represent a body of skills and competencies. So oftentimes you'll see specific certifications or licenses or degrees listed here. Like here we've got a CPA, an MBA, a CISA, all of these different certifications or degrees. We can see how many postings have asked for that particularly. And that is the last piece of our walkthrough. So I'm going to confirm and continue. We're now at the final stage where we can export this report and grab all of that data from our competitive landscape step, our labor market step, and our skills step, and put it all into one big report. So I've got a little summary just reminding me, you know, we were looking at these occupations for Madison Area Technical College. This export includes data-informed analysis of the competitive landscape, labor market demand, and relevant skills for the program detailed. And this is the title of our report. It is the program with its zip code, and I can edit that title very easily. And then I've got a couple options here. So we put in a lot of work and we pulled a lot of data. So I can always save this report within Analyst, save that to my home page, and come back to it, pick up right where I left off at any time. And I can also export this into one of these three formats. So I'm going to export this to PDF, and we'll just take a look at that here. And we'll give it a moment to load. There's a lot of data in there, so it takes a sec. Okay, so there's our title we saw earlier. I've got a table of contents because that was a lot of data that we just walked through, and I can see this report is 17 pages. Well, it looks like the skills section is a bit longer than 17 pages. There is going to be a summary of the kinds of data sources that we just walked through together. So this details where that traditional labor market comes from, sourced from government sources and agencies. And that's where we get stuff like industry data, occupation data, demographics, programs, job posting data and what that is, as well as the labor force or workforce profiles. And then if I scroll on, I can see my program definition, so I know exactly what zip code we were looking at and at what institution. All of my competitive landscape parameters. So this is all included so that if you were to save this and come back to it, you know exactly what your parameters were. But if you were to email this to a colleague or print this off and take this to a presentation, everybody who was going to then see this report from you also knows exactly what they're looking at. Okay, and then I'm just going to skip forward ahead a little bit. All of that data that we just walked through together, all of it is included in here. So like I said, you could now email this to colleagues, print this off, save it to your hard drive, do what you need to do, but all of that is pulled together. And you've got program data, occupation data, job postings, profiles, all of that. And now we can sit down with this data and have a conversation about, okay, should we continually offer this program? Should we tweak it to better match demand? What do we need to do here? And you've got the data to back up your next move. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back over to Elise, and she's going to let me know if there were any questions, and we'll kind of talk through anything that's come up for all of you.
Awesome. So yeah, we did have a couple of questions, but first I wanted to issue a kind of apology to any Canadian folks out there. We had a mix-up in mailing lists and ended up sending this out to Canadian folks, and this is not a report that Canada has yet. The good news is that through that, we've been realizing that we've been doing a couple of trainings where Canada folks are kind of getting teased in a way to this data that they want, and we don't have it for them. So we are doing a Canada focused training next week. I did put the link to go and sign up for that in the training in the chat feature, so go look at that. And because of this, we're hearing a lot of pieces that people need, and so I think we're trying to figure out a way to make this report available for Canadian folks as well. There's just one piece of data in there that we don't have for Canada, and so that kind of makes the report a little bit harder to run succinctly. Caroline, your camera's frozen again. If you want to like restart it again, because I'm just looking at you like very lovely face, just frozen in time. Yeah, that's great. And then I'm going to stop actually just stay on, yep, there we go, because we had some questions that go into this. So we did have one question that was, would the education sector be tied to the typical entry level for education? So for occupations. So when we're inputting all of that education information before, is that tied over for occupations? And I believe it is.
Yes. Let me just go back a few pages to where I think that question was being asked. So when we were talking about this, is this the question that we're referring to? To repeat that question?
There's a similar question to that too, asking if we should focus on, is it best practice to use the filter for job postings? And I think that's dependent on the job you're looking at or the program, because there are some programs that are going to be much more new and niche that haven't quite gotten to the level where we're seeing education level within our SOC codes or our SIP codes. So I definitely think using job posting education filters for that is a good one, and ones that maybe you're hearing from your local employers that the job, like what they expect for their employees, isn't quite matching up to what we're seeing in the marketplace. Because we know that, bachelors were a big thing 10, 20 years ago. I know when I was going to school, that was the big thing. And I've been talking to a lot of people who are now saying, oh, we only want credentials or whatnot. So Caroline, what would you add to that? And then we'll jump back to the first question.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I don't really have anything to add. You did a great job with that, Elise.
Great. So the first question was, I think, the education section, the very first step that we go in and put in all those education levels. So with how kind of large this report is, we're looking at different pieces. And so this is defining what institutions we're going to pull data from IPEDS. So whether we're including 4 or 2 year, but I believe that does eventually link over to level of education, because for occupations, because we tie all that together. So
let me remove some of these.
Okay.
And then we'll go forward.
The exact question, Caroline, was, would the education section not be tied to entry-level education for occupations?
Good question. Good question. So I do want to keep all of these. Yeah, we didn't really get into typical entry level of education much in this report. Where you could adjust that, if I go forward a few pages here, you will be able to see just the occupation data that's tied to a particular typical entry level education in association with this filter right here. So if I wanted to select to filter just job postings and job counts based on a required level of education, maybe I select associate's degree and then also no education listed, so I'm pulling in job postings that unhelpfully don't mention anything about education. What that is going to do is not just it's not just going to adjust my numbers for the unique and total posting count, it's also going to adjust my annual openings and jobs numbers based on typical entry level of education. So we see that right here in this little tooltip definition. So job totals will be filtered by the proportion of the workforce in those occupations with exactly that level of education. So looking at the government data, we're able to see for accountants and auditors, and I'll go forward a step. Accountants and auditors, there were 391 jobs and 35 annual openings when I choose the associates and the no education listed filters. But if you remember when we ran this previously, there were a higher number of annual openings and jobs for all these. So we have filtered down to proportionally reflect the number of jobs. Hopefully I'm saying this well. We filtered the number of jobs down to match the proportion of workers with an associate's level of education. Hopefully I said that in a clear enough way.
I think so. I think that sounded good. Also, I think that helps answer that question. So the education section that we're adding in education filters and levels are just defining for the program level. So what are we getting from IPEDS? How are we pulling that? So we're showing that competitive landscape. If you do want to see the level for occupations, you do need to click that job posting education filter. And that job posting education filter seems as though it is titled incorrectly. Maybe it should just be education level for jobs. So that is filtering not just job postings, but also occupations. So that's helpful to see.
That's why it's helpful to read that little tooltip.
Yeah, and You can define what occupations you want to tie to this. You can also be able to say, okay, we know that this occupation is far above an associate, so that's helpful. So, all right, so similar programs, how are they determined and are they based on shared skills? Caroline, I'm gonna let you answer that one first, and then I'll add anything that I might have to it.
So we go back to the similar programs page. Let's go back one more. Okay, so here we go. So similar programs, these are programs that are supplying the labor market with graduates that are potentially competing for the same occupation as the graduates from the program in question. So we started off this, we were looking at the zip code for accounting at Madison Area Technical College. We were looking at 520301. So that's a program for accounting. But there are some other similar programs that would supply the labor market with graduates that are potentially competing for those same accounting and tax preparing and bookkeeping jobs. And so if I want to capture those graduates as well, that's why I went in and I searched for 5203, not 01, but 02, because that's a very similar accounting program. So that's how it's evaluated. That's how we're evaluating similar, is where would there be overlap. If you offer 510201 at your institution, the one down the road offers 520302. Likely the graduates from both those institutions, even though they're studying under different zip codes, they're going to be going after the same job options out there.
Yeah,
so
and
that's what those similar programs are.
And Caroline, we make those like similar programs based off of our crosswalk and talking to clients and that real world instances that we're having, you know, knowing that people are using these different ones. So we're determining those based off of, like I said, client feedback, but also the crosswalk that we start out with. So Emsi does a custom crosswalk. So we have an NCES crosswalk that we start with, and then we customize that pretty heavily. And our consultants did that work based off of the consulting work they've done with many of our clients. So we feel very confident with it. And we know that there's pieces in there that can be really helpful to help assign those, but we also know that every school is using a different zip code. So we want to make sure that we're looking at that full competitive landscape by doing that. So awesome.
And that's why we the flexibility of allowing you to choose what overlapping programs you want to use. So you don't have to include these others if you don't want to.
Yeah. So the next question is the line chart of completions over the number of completions for bachelor's and master's added together. If I'm only interested in one level or the other, is it possible to have the line chart reflect just that one level? And can we make that change by changing up your competitive landscape at the beginning?
Yep. So I can deselect bachelor's degree right here and not consider that education level at all. So we go forward. My completions count has gone way down, and now I'm only seeing 2 institutions. All of these completions would be at all of the education levels that I had selected and not include bachelor's degree of above because I had not selected those. And if I go in here, I'll be able to see each institution's individual completions. If we look at Herzing University, I can see they do offer completions. They do have completions reported at the bachelor's degree level, but those completions will not be included in this aggregated count. And it's not included. See 14, that's the number of completions they had at this award of at least 1 but less than 2 academic years, and the associate's degree level. But I saw 14, not 17, which tells me that these 3 completions at the bachelor's degree level are not being included in our total count. So that's how you would.
Awesome. So the next question kind of goes wrong with this, but I think that the best way to answer this one is, so the question is, in addition to completions, would it be possible to get information on enrollments from IPEDS? This could help with evaluating other schools. Now, this report doesn't have enrollment information, but we can get that in other reports in Analyst. So I would recommend looking at the program table to get some more information. And then our program overview, I believe, offers some enrollment data. It's not crazy robust, but we are pulling what we can from iPads to help you get some more information. So I'd recommend checking out those 2 reports. They'll add some extra information there. And Kate, I think you were the one who said that, and we'll be meeting next week, so I can go over some of those details with you as well. So a couple more things down here. Now, Caroline, I was really like, this question came up about the administrative unit only. And I thought that's definitely something we covered before this training, but the question is,
a weird one.
yeah, and the question, it's super weird for us too. So we're like, wait, what? So the question about this one is, if that's actually selected, does it ever create duplicates? Say if a school reports individually and to an admin unit, our Joanna doesn't know if this happens, but she's just wondering if we've heard any cases of this. And I'm not sure how to answer that, so I'll let you answer that and then we'll go from there.
I've not heard of any cases of this.
Mm-hmm.
If there are duplicates, then iPads is getting duplicates as well. My guess is that sounds like that would only happen in the case of a mistake in reporting to iPads. But in general, well, I've never come across that. And I work with Indiana, which is a system of schools that all report to the state level. So they're all individual colleges. There's a college in, Fort Wayne and Bloomington and blah, 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 all over the state. But all of those local completions for those colleges are reported just at the district level to Indianapolis. So that's how I know how to explain this, because I have a state that operates on that, but I've never run into problems with duplicates. And if those duplicates were happening, then my guess is it was probably a reporting mistake.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. So the next one is about some time frame stuff, and we are 1 minute over, so this will probably be the last question, but rest assured, I know that we have a couple more questions, so we'll go through and check these, and then your account manager will reach out to you with additional answers for those questions that you had. We want to make sure that everybody gets these answered. But the last question is, can we change the default year for the completions to be able to look at multiple years for those completions? So the reason for that is to see how those have changed over time. And I think this is a great question because we can't change it in this report, but you can take a look at past years of completions to check that out. But also in this report, when you go and click into a certain school with completions, it does show those past years. So while this won't show schools that don't have any completions this year, it will show the school's completion trend over time. So you do get part of that for the schools that have completions this year, but not necessarily for ones that may have had completions last year, not this year. So we can look at that stuff over time in the program overview, which is really helpful. But I would say in this situation, I would use those trends to take a look and dive deeper into those schools. Caroline, anything to add to that?
No, that's exactly right. You can also see the regional trends. So looking at all of the institutions that show up here over time. And you can go into the program table and you could add multiple years to compare completions in one spot. We're not doing it in this report because that would just add so many pages to your exports. But like Elise said, you can click into each of these and see for this particular institution, how many completions did they report over time? And then you've got that aggregate count over time here as well.
Awesome.
But go to the program table to see individual years for institutions.
Yes. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining today. I was just told that both of our screens were frozen, so that's super fun. We just have really frozen screen faces. It's good. Thank you for joining. We really, really look forward to doing these trainings every month, and we'll have another one next month. We are not sure on the agenda for that or the topic, so send over any ideas you have or anything you want to know. We really enjoy having you guys join us, and look forward to any questions that follow up from this. But there were a couple, like I said, that we need to follow up with questions on, so I will make sure to follow up with folks on those, and we'll send your account managers your way. But aside from that, have a great day. We'll look forward to talking to you next month, and we'll talk soon. Bye, everybody.